Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Unreligious Podcast, where we spread the love of Jesus without judgment or bylaws, focusing solely on Jesus Christ and the Bible. I am
And I
Chris.
am Staycation Drew.
You are a big staycation
Oh
Drew.
yeah, Big Drewski. Now, I'm on my staycation this week. It has been more like a workation, if you want to call it that. Anybody that's ever had tried to do anything with a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old understands it has not necessarily been smooth, but we're making it. But how have you been since we recorded last? I know you said you had a headache today, but other than that,
Yeah, I had the typical migraine come on. And dude, it was one of those ones where you're starting to come out of sleep. You're waking up a little bit in the morning and you kind of feel it. It's there, so you just go back to sleep hoping you're gonna wake up and it's not gonna be there.
yeah,
And when I finally got out of bed and I'm like, I'm not gonna let this thing beat me down. We got podcast tonight. I got too much to do. I think I was up 25 minutes, and I ended up taking a migraine pill and going and laying back in bed. And dude, I hate it when that happens, Drew, because you know how it is with the migraine. When you have one first thing in the morning like that, by the time you've gotten rid of it, the day is gone.
oh yeah,
You spent the whole day nursing this headache, so the day is gone. Yeah, it's not. I'm still a little foggy headed for the medication I took, but that's all right. The
yeah.
headache's gone.
That's like last time I got a real bad one. Um, I was like I had to call in or whatever. And, somebody had basically cracked a joke about, oh, me trying to lay out or whatever. And I was like, dude, like, that's the thing that really is terrible about it is like, I would love to just be casually laying out, but it's like, that's the worst is when you burn a sick day, but you're actually sick, like in bed all day. Especially for me being at home when I'm sick like that, because it's like my 5-year-old's like, Dad, can you play? Can you do this? Can you? It's like, oh, I wish I could do anything other than just lay here and be miserable. But yeah, I get
Yeah,
them pretty bad myself, so I definitely understand. Um,
I mean, other than that, yeah, it's dude, it has been cold here. Like this is brutal. Today the high was like 63 and the wind was blowing and it was cloudy. I mean, it was like almost more than hoodie weather out there. We're in the middle of June. I can't believe it. But yeah, it's been cold, but we had a good week, man. I have no complaints. We got some visit time with my sister and my mom. Um, yeah. Also, uh, go God. I got invited to start joining a men's group on Saturday
hey,
morning
there you go.
from our church.
That's cool,
Yeah,
dude.
they meet they meet down here at the lake, dude. They meet at North Point, right on the lake, on the jetty. And one of the guys, the guy who leads it, actually cooks breakfast for everybody. You just have to bring your coffee.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but yeah, I got it. Yeah, it's at 6 a.m. Saturday morning.
I've actually thought about starting. So there's plenty of men's stuff around, but there's times where we kind of hit a lull, and it's like, like we've not done the Sunday night round tables. I know I used to talk about those a lot, but we've not done the Sunday night round tables since like I think we've had one since Thanksgiving. Now, I was doing the Tuesday morning Bible studies, those have wrapped up. So I'm kind of in between, but I was actually thinking about starting something just maybe at my dad's house or something because he's got 3 acres out there, just bonfire and, whatever, keeping it simple or whatever. Um, but, uh, but yeah, dude, I finish your story about the men's thing because I was going to talk about, I was actually going to mention that as one of my things that, happened over the weekend or whatever.
Yeah, no, it was just really cool. A really good friend of mine, Dan, who I've known for 15 years now. Him and his wife, when Audrey and I first started diving really into Crossroads when we lived here last time, Dan and his wife did the small group, or now they're referred to as life group. But they did the small group, and it was mine and Audrey's first small group we ever joined
Hmm.
ever. And my mom actually joined with us, and we got to know these people so well, dude, that over the past 15 years, even though we've been in Tennessee, we've been in Portugal, we have stayed in touch with them the whole time. And Dan is actually the one who reached out, and he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in joining up with the men's group on 6 o'clock Saturday mornings at North Point for just basically talk and prayer and fellowship?" And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that was what I was going to say was, so um, the way that it worked out now. So if you guys haven't already, make sure you click like, click subscribe. If you have any questions, email us, or if you're watching this video, leave a comment, and we'll try to get to them. If you guys leave some comments live towards the end, make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. But this is actually Father's Day would have just happened. So we're recording this ahead of time, but Father's Day is coming up, and it's about to happen, or it should have just happened yesterday, but as we're recording this, it's this weekend. So ahead of time, happy Father's Day to everybody. Which we'll talk about that here in a second. But I don't want to get. I was trying to make notes of stuff I want to talk about there. So the way it worked out was this past week was the last week before my staycation, and then my sister messaged me a couple of weeks back. She had her last cancer treatment on Friday, and she asked me if I could go. So I was like, "Yeah, let me ask and see." I was like, "The only reason they might say no is just because literally, like, it's the week before my vacation, so they might be kind of whatever." So I was like, but I asked off. They gave it to me. Worked out perfect. I went over there. I took some lunch. And then I came back because she's going to be ringing the bell later. Funny story, though. So now, for those of you, if you listen to my testimony episode, I talked about it at the end of my testimony episode. So, you should already know it if you listen to it. But if you didn't, I announced my officially on social media, I announced my call to preach. I accepted the call probably like a year ago. But I finally announced it because I was wanting to try to get some seminary classes and stuff done before I did it, but it's just financially just can't make that work yet. So I was like, dude, I'm just tired of doing it. So I announced it on Thursday after work because I was going to have Friday off and then a full week. So I'm like, okay, maybe it'll die down a little bit. But, one of my mentors gave me the best advice probably that I've ever had. And normally on Fridays, I go in late. So I try to sit down and basically prepare a sermon every week as if I might have to preach anyways, which helped me out tremendously on this podcast. Just because now that we're going through different subjects, I actually am going back to my notes. But which, by the way, I went to a men's thing. I'll get to that in a story later. But one thing that this dude said, so it was Jason McLeod. Which, have you ever seen the movie Facing the Giants?
I
It's the
don't think
football
so.
movie that the church did way back in the day, where the coach comes in and then puts God at the center of his life, and then the football team starts winning and all this. Well, it was a big time Christian movie back in the day, but uh, Jason McLeod is the guy that played Brock in that movie, and he's actually the one that led it. But one thing that he said that I thought was really cool, and I've done this inadvertently, was he said he buys a Bible for each season of his life. So he's got his Bible that he carried through college. He's got, the Bible like that he had when he first accepted the call to preach or whatever. And I'm like, dude, it's so funny because like literally I have my high school Bible, which was like NLT navy blue one that I still have. And then when I went to college, I bought this like apologetics. It was like a youth apologetics Bible. And then I also had at one point my King James NLT parallel. And then one of my
Hmm.
favorite study Bibles that I use a lot is my CSB study Bible. And then that's kind of the one that I use a lot of the time. Well, I I did this before he said that. Well, dude, so Friday, I went to drop my sister lunch off. Well, then I went to the Christian bookstore and I was like, you know what, dude, I want to get like a little pocket Bible, which is this one that I bought, because I want to keep it basically on me at all times. Because I'm like, okay, well, with the preacher thing, you just never know. Somebody may have an issue or something that they're dealing with or whatever. And so I'm like, dude, I want to make sure to have like a Bible on me at all times. So I actually went over to Cedar Springs and I stopped in, and because I was like, okay, I want to get like a pocket Bible that I can keep in just a pocket, just on me at all times. Well, dude, it was funny because I was over in the Bible section when I was taking these Bibles, these different Bibles, and I was putting them in my back pocket. And I'm like moving around, walking around. I'm like, ah, man, that's too heavy. And I put it back. Well, I put one of the Bibles in my back pocket. Well, as I put it in my pocket, I kind of stood there for a second, and then I kind of walked around. Well, then I turned around, and the dude that was working there was like, "Hey, can I help you?" And I'm like, I think he thought I was maybe going to try to steal a Bible or something. But I was like, yeah, dude. I said, so yeah, I'm just trying to find a pocket-sized Bible that'll fit like in my back pocket or my top overall pocket that's not too heavy. And he's like, okay, I think he still was kind of like not 100% sold. But then I was like, so, and I pulled two or three out. I said, I like this translation, but it's a little thick. And so, anyways, he helped me, navigate. But I bought this New King James Pocket Bible, but I thought that was hilarious because I think he thought I was going to try to steal it. But so, anyways, did the thing with the sister. She rang the bell. That was awesome. Well, then Brother Keith hit me up Thursday night after I made the preacher announcement. He said, "Hey, dude, don't forget." We got Anvil coming up, which Anvil was a weekend retreat up at Sanctuary Hills. And it was one of those where, you're supposed to pay money and like go stay all weekend or whatever. And I just didn't have enough money to do all that. And so he hit me up. He's like, man, if you want to come out, we'd appreciate it. And so I ended up going. And, you're talking about the men's thing. And dude, when I went, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go, And then when I actually went, they asked us, hey, we want you guys to think about it, but like tell us your name, where you're from, and why you're here, and just think about it. And we're going to go around in a circle. And I was sitting there thinking, I was just like, dude, man, like, why am I here? And they were like, what are you trying to get out of this? Well, I was like, dude, I just literally want to rest and recharge my batteries or whatever. And dude, I actually didn't realize how much I needed it until I went. But I went Friday night and then I went back Saturday morning. And, as I was sitting there and these guys were talking about their stories, and I'm not going to share anything that we shared out of confidence and stuff, but there were some broken guys there, man, that had some real stuff going on and just different things. But it was funny because like I was like, dude, I'm just trying to relax, and rest and recharge and listen. And I explained I've been trying to disciple those around me that are willing to, that I can be a light to and stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm just in a season where I'm just exhausted. And they wanted to do the forging thing where, you bend the metal and all that. Well, it's funny because I was sitting there thinking, bro, I did this last time. I'm really not trying to do this forging stuff. And I'm like psyching myself up, like, dude, and in my head it was like raining, and I'm like, oh, dude, please let it rain this out. Then I'm like, well, that's selfish of me because I don't want to take these guys' blessing, but I'm just like, so I start psyching myself up. I'm like, all right, dude, what shape are you gonna do, and what's the meaning and this and that. And as I'm walking down the hill, I'm like, dude, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I'm so tired. I'm exhausted, because it was like 10 o'clock at night. Well, I get down there, and they had even numbers plus me, and so I'm like, holy crap. Like, and in my head I'm like, okay, well, if I miscounted, if somebody wants to forge, because you kind of need somebody to hold it. I don't know if you've ever done it or tried it, but you kind of have to have somebody hold it while you twist it and do all that. Well, then it was perfect because it was like God was like, hey, dude, I know you're tired, I know you want to rest. And so he kind of hooked that up, so that was cool. But I got to kind of refresh and recharge and do that. And then that flew into the staycation. We went up to the aquarium, which was awesome. Marin, my 5-year-old loved it. My 1-year-old loved it, because she was just like, whoa, that was cool. We went and checked out this place called Roaring Fork, which was a terrible idea because it's like a motor trail. Well, dude, once we got on there, it's one way in, one way out. And I'm like, thankfully, my 1-year-old was asleep, but I'm like, dude, if she wakes up crying, this is going to be terrible because it took us like an hour to get through it. But we went to the arcade, and of course, it was like $25 minimum. And the guy's like, oh, well, if you do 145, you'll triple all your tickets. I'm like, dude, there ain't nothing in that case that I can't. For 145 bucks, I'm like, dude, I could buy just about anything with that. But we did all that, had a great time. That was fun. And it was just, I don't know, it's been a really cool, relaxing week. We went to Trader Joe's, which that's like the first time I went in forever. And let me just say something about Trader Joe's. All the Karens shop there. If I'm offending some people, I'm sorry, but I'm a pretty big guy, and it's a little tight in there, and I can't tell you how many like soccer moms about ran me over with their carts. But literally, as I was in there, I was like, "This is where all the Karens are. This is it." I'm pretty sure the meetings are held in the back, you know. But I just got to spend some good time with the family and stuff, dude. It was awesome, and I kind of had a little bit of a God moment there. My last day there, Thursday, or it might have been Wednesday. Um, there's a lady at work that she kind of, I vent to her, she vents to me or whatever, but she was telling me that she was having some real bad, terrible, just family stuff, and I didn't ask what it was, but and I think it's a good, me and you've talked about this before, about a lot of times we think that sharing the gospel is walking someone down the Roman road and all this, but I think a lot of times it's just sharing your story, but also just being there for people. And for those of you that know, I had quit tobacco altogether, but I did go back onto it, kind of relapse, if you want to call it that. I'm working my way back down. I've been doing these Zens, which is just nicotine. Um, Now, there's going to be some people that's going to say that what I'm about to tell you is not very Christian, but um, she also is trying to stop nicotine, and so I was just talking to her, and I was just listening and letting her talk, and she's just talking about being frustrated at work and going through stuff that she wouldn't wish on anybody, and whatever. But she was talking about how there's a couple people at work that was essentially not being sensitive to her issue and causing problems, and like not really micromanaging, but just causing grief in the workplace and stuff. And she's like, man, I could just, lay into them, this, and that, whatever. And so I told her, I said, well, hey, I've got some Zens, because she's trying to quit smoking. She's like, I ain't trying to smoke, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I've got some Zens. And I had the 3 milligrams. And she's like, that's not strong enough, though, Drew. I was like, well, you can do two of them. And she's like, okay, okay. So I handed it to her, and she pulled a couple Zens out, and I walked off, and I was like, man, I just was like, she's going through, and in my head, I'm like, okay, how can I spin this into like a Jesus moment? And I try to, every moment that pops up, I try to spin it back around to Jesus. And so I had probably like, I don't know, 7 or 8 of these left in the pouch. And of course, these are like $6. But so I was like, you know what, man, I'm going to give her this whole thing. But what I did was, and I remembered this verse from our podcast. You remember about it basically being kind to your enemies, and that'll leave hot heaping coals on their head. Well, I wrote Romans, I think it's Romans 12. I think it's right at the end of Romans 12. But I wrote those Bible verses on the back of it, and I handed it to her. I said, hey, look, you're having a way worse day than me. Just take this, enjoy it. Because she said she liked them or whatever. I said, now, if you'll flip that over, I said, I wrote a Bible verse there for you. I said, go read that. I think it's going to help you, because I said, I know those people are giving you grief, but if you'll just kill them with kindness, that'll leave hot heaping coals on their head. And then the Lord says, vengeance is mine. Let me take care of it. And so she was like, man, I really needed that, and whatever. And so I'm not telling that story just to try to like, uh, honestly, the only reason I'm talking about it is because I was going to mention her in my prayer request. But, there's some people that be like, well, that's not Christian. You shouldn't be handing people nicotine. Look, in that moment, I genuinely feel like not only did she need that nicotine, but she needed those Bible verses. And so I didn't even think twice about it. But again, I think there's ways that we can be there for people that's outside of just the conventional, like, oh, let me pray for you, or let me do this, or, whatever. So,
Yeah.
but dude, my week's been pretty jam packed. And then Father's Day's coming up. So they basically announced it at church that they're going to do an all men's choir. So I'm going to come out of retirement and join the men's choir for that Sunday. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah,
I don't
good
have a
boy.
clue what we're singing or nothing, but I'm just going to get up there and do my thing. But I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna show you something that's gonna blow your mind. You were earlier talking about Bibles,
Hmm.
and people carrying their Bibles around. I'm gonna show you something.
Yeah, I seen you looking. Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I may have even had one of those at one point. For those of you that's watching, it's
Dude,
the old school with the Jesus painting on the outside.
like this was my very first Bible ever.
Dude, that's so cool.
1977. Now wait, I got something that's gonna make you very happy. I didn't even realize it. I never knew until I looked at it today. What version is that?
King James. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
So I just thought I that's what I stepped out of the room a minute ago. I asked my wife, I said, "Do you know where my little like kid Bible is?" She goes, "I think." I said, "Would you grab it?" Yeah, I'll get it.
well, I just thought that was a cool idea because he said he's a pastor now, but he said that in his office he's got all the Bibles, and he's like, man, like he's like, I'm a big fan of carrying a different Bible through a different season, and I was like, dude, that's such a cool idea. And then I got to thinking, I'm like, I kind of inadvertently did that, but because he's like, man, there's times where, I'll be like trying to get in the headspace of like a college age person, and then he's like, I'll be like, oh, dude, where's my Bible? And he said he'll go thumb through and read some of the notes and whatever. But I was like, dude, that's such a cool idea. Is like when you pass into like a new season to get like a new Bible, and I was like, dude, that's so cool. But yeah, this right here is my everyday carry now. It's pocket sized or whatever, but I'm traveling light tonight. But so
There you go. All right. I've I've got that Bible, and then I've got my big study
yeah,
Bible. This is the only other Bible I've owned other than my kid Bible, and I got this one in 2010.
okay.
So
I really like that
yeah,
CSB study Bible that I got. That's kind of my at home Bible, which I have been taking it to church, but I've considered just switching to this one and then taking my notebook with me and traveling lighter. But yeah, I just thought that was a pretty cool idea, man. The different Bibles for the different seasons, and of course, I don't know if you can see it, but I bought the tabs, and I got me some camo tabs. you know,
yeah.
but fa-
Gotta have the camo in East
so
Tennessee,
Father's
man.
Day's coming up. You guys got any plans for that, or what do you guys usually do for that?
It just depends. I'm not a big like, oh, hey, it's Father's Day. Everybody celebrate me. I'm kind of like, so what are you doing for your husband?
Yeah,
It's kind of, so I'm not sure yet. My daughter might come up from Milwaukee. Not sure what's going to happen yet. I kind of, for me, it's well, it's Father's Day. I shouldn't have to plan Father's Day,
right.
right? I mean, not being mean or anything. I just thought if y'all want to do something great, if you don't, that's okay too. Trust me, I am perfectly fine sitting in my recliner reading my Bible and chilling for the day or watching movies.
I know
I'm
that
good.
this episode's going to drop afterwards, but I always make the joke for like Father's Day or Christmas or whatever for buying stuff for the man in your life. To those that might be listening, but it's like you know. I always say, look, socks and underwear. I know it's kind of a crappy gift, but to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I don't necessarily. If I don't get gifted, I'm just going to roll the dice until I do get gifted some. But socks and underwear is good. And I always tell the women folk if they ever ask me my opinion, get your man ammo. If he doesn't need ammo, then you don't have a man. No, I'm just kidding. But I always say, here's the thing: ammunition is the perfect gift. And ladies, if you're listening to this, before you even ask, I don't know what kind of ammo because I don't know what kind of gun. Doesn't matter. Just go buy him some ammo because here's the thing: if he doesn't have a gun to fit the ammo, he now has an excuse to get one. So
Oh, babe, I so appreciate these 30-06 rounds now. I gotta go get
exactly.
one.
So beef jerky and bullets is never bad. Coffee, Black Rifle coffee. I actually am prone to the Sanctuary Hills coffee, which is that's the coffee at Sanctuary Hills and the Real Momentum Ministry that I talk about a lot. But that's also the coffee they use at church, which is phenomenal. But dude, coffee is always a good one, but coffee, bullets, and beef jerky is never bad. But yeah, we'll probably do. I mean, we'll go to church, and I'll probably go over to my dad's house, and we'll hang out over there, and just it's just family stuff for me. I always enjoy it. Especially like I always enjoyed it, just kind of celebrating my dad. But now that I am a dad, the traditions that form and stuff. But normally, my oldest will do like a little handmade card or something for me. If money's not too tight, my wife will usually surprise me with a little small gift or two or whatever. But I definitely appreciate it. And to all the fathers out there, you're probably doing better than you realize. But it's hard, dude. It's like it's like me working all the time, dude. I'm trying my best to be as patient as I can, but it's like, dude, like right now, I'm so sleep deprived and busy and stuff. It's hard, but really love on the fathers in your life, or if you know somebody that is a father, because I don't know, it seems like it's rough out here.
It is very rough out here. Yeah, to all the dads out there, let me reiterate to all the dads out there who are dads. Yeah, this is about you. This is about the hard work you put in. This is about supporting your family, raising your kids right. It's all about, the dad. And mothers have Mother's Day, and it's all about mom. So I think that for me, just getting, I've raised 6 kids now. So getting those phone calls from every one of them and watching them do life is for me, that's rewarding enough.
Yeah.
They're out there being productive members of society, doing life. Granted, there's a couple of lost sheep out there that we need to go get, but we're working on that.
Well, and
Yeah,
you have a very unique perspective because, who knows what the future holds for me, but, my family and stuff. But, especially now that I announced the preacher kid that, or the preacher thing, you know, my wife didn't necessarily sign up for that. So it's like she's now essentially a preacher's wife, and my kids are preacher's kids, which I was a preacher kid. So I know what all that entails. But, like, thankfully, I got back into church early enough, um, and I don't ever plan on walking away from my faith or the church or anything. Again, it's like, I don't want to jinx myself, but it's like, I think I'm so locked in now. I can't imagine life without my faith. But it's like, thankfully, I got ahead of the curve on that one. But I know, like, you said you kind of did the flash in the pan Christian thing for a while. Now you're coming back, but your kids are kind of grown, and and so you've kind of seen both sides of it.
yeah, absolutely. It's funny you brought that up because yesterday, you know, sometimes us men, well, me speaking, I just need some time alone. I just need woosah time. I just need to be with my thoughts and with my God, nobody else around, no distraction. So yesterday I took a drive down to Lake Michigan, and I parked right out there in front of the lake, and I just was looking at the lake, and I was thinking, we think we have it hard and rough as fathers, as dads to our kids. Can you imagine our heavenly Father, how he
Yeah.
feels? I mean, I said I've got a couple of stray sheep out there that we need to go get. I mean, can you imagine how tough it is on him? So I was sitting there thinking, Drew, and I was thinking, you know, I finally understand it. I understand the flash in the pan Christian. And here's why. Because this is the first time ever in my life that I have 100% fully committed to Christ and said, that's it. I'm done. No more flesh. I'm living my life for Christ. Listen to my testimony. And since I've been living for Christ, I told my wife too, this walk is so
Yeah.
hard, Drew. It is so hard. It's exhausting. So I can see where it would be easy to get to a point where you're like, you know what? This is too much for me. I'm out. And I think that's where these deconstructed Christians come in. And it's overwhelming. It's hard. It is hard work because the reason it's hard work is because it's constant work. It doesn't ever stop. You don't get a day off. You don't get a break. You are constantly having to seek out God because the enemy's right there to snatch you up when you don't. And so I don't know, I was just thinking about it yesterday, Drew, and I was just thinking how, this it's worth every minute of it, because in the end we get salvation, we get paradise, we get to be with our God forever and for eternity. But the walk is so hard, I can see why it's so easy to walk
Yeah.
away. And you just have to, at those times, in the previous podcast that we talked about, keeping your fire lit, that's part of it. That's part of not becoming a flash in the pan, and that's why it's so difficult, because you've got to feed that fire, and it's daunting. But just think about Happy Father's Day to our Father in heaven. I mean, good grief, he's the one who does it all for
Yeah,
everybody.
very true. Very, very true. And like you said, a lot of times we don't necessarily think about our Father in heaven on Father's Day, but yeah, it's like you said,
Yeah,
man, it's like I just, you know, at work, in the real world, church, men's group, just at the grocery store, whatever, it's like, I try, to just focus on him and living right and doing the right things, and not as like, you know, not from like a being focused on works thing, but it's just I try to constantly think about like my testimony and stuff and my witness to others, and it's just like, it's like there's a spotlight on you at all times, not even talking about the preacher side of thing, but just walking the Christian walk. And it's like, dude, by the time I get home, I'm so exhausted. But then it's like, really, like we've talked about in the past, the most important thing is when you get home and how you lead your family and stuff. And dude, like it's difficult for me because it's like, for approximately, you know, 32 ish, 31 ish years of my life, well, maybe not so much. I probably walked away when I was somewhere around 21, 22. So really, for like 10 years of my life, I'd basically put my faith on the back burner, and then I had started building this family. And so I'm in a weird spot where I don't know if this makes sense to you or the listeners, but it's like when I'm not at home, I feel more like myself. Like the I don't want to say the person I'm trying to be, but it's like the Drewski that God is working through. When I'm outside, I feel more like myself. And then when I come home, it's like I fight this, like the Drew that I used to be, um, and the Drew that my family's used to me being, and like the new me that is forming, if that makes sense. Um, and it's really difficult, just to balance that, because there's times where like your family knows you the most, so it's like, you know and I know that they see the change, but it's hard to balance that. um but
by the way, I just want to tell you real quick, I am so proud of you. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care about negative comments. I don't care about criticism. Drew, you're answering a calling, and it is a big, big burden what you're about to take on. It's granted, it's rewarding. You get to see so many lives transformed and changed, but just doing this podcast has given me a whole new appreciation for pastors putting together sermons every single week and delivering.
yeah.
It is not easy to do. So I just want you to know, dude, I am so proud of you, and you're doing it at an age where you're going to have an amazing career in front of you, Drew. I'm too old for that now. I'm pushing 60. That's beyond me. All I can do is podcasts and street preach, maybe, I
Yeah.
guess. But no, I just want you to know I'm proud of you, dude. That is not something that I know you took lightly, and I know that's something that you had on your mind for a very
Oh
long
yeah, I
time.
mean,
So the fact that you have committed to it, I'm proud
yeah,
of you.
dude, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I really strongly wrestled with it for, well, I mean, it started in high school and I ran from it, but then when I started going back to church, I mean, I wrestled with it for probably 6 or 8 months before I accepted it. And then I spent a year working on being, above reproach and mentally wrapping around it and whatever. And then, you know, once I decided it, I was like, okay, I just want to be normal just for like a month or two, just a few months, just enjoy that last little bit of normalcy. But when Phil Robertson passed away, and I started watching all these clips, and he was super unashamed, and he was a master of like preaching the simplest form of the gospel in a profound way. And literally the podcast that they started is Unashamed, which fit him to the T. But once he passed away, then I knew I had this week coming up. I just felt it in my spirit. I was like, dude, it's the right time to announce it. But I definitely appreciate it. And that's one of my prayer requests. I was kind of starting a little list here, but just my journey ahead is one of my prayer requests. But I guess that's a good segue in. And I also appreciate it too. Your wife even commented on my post and was like, "We're so proud of you." And I was like, oh, "Dude, which the response seems to be overall positive." Now, granted, I know there's some people in my life that there's no telling what they're saying behind closed doors about, um,
But that doesn't
it
matter.
doesn't. It doesn't. And like you said, it
Doesn't matter.
doesn't. But there's people in your life that they want to hold on to the snapshot of like who you were when they liked you best, and they don't necessarily want to acknowledge the transformation, which is hard. But now I do have your house, Portugal and future house in here. Is there any other prayer requests you have that you want to?
Uh, um, the only other prayer request I would ask for right now is um, that the Lord put the right people in the family members that are lost sheep right now to bring them back, because that's how it's going to have to happen. We all know there are people you might be able to reach, there are people you can reach, there are people you can talk to about God, there are people you cannot, especially if your family, they don't want to hear it from you because they've been hearing it for years. So we're at a point with these lost sheep, they don't want to hear it from us anymore. So God's going to have to intervene, divine intervention, and put somebody in their life to influence that
Yeah,
choice. That's it. Just, yeah. The lost sheep need to be brought back. Brought back.
yeah. Um, It's in my other Bible. I'll take a picture of it and send it to you, or see if I can find a link to it. But the my pastor Jeff, not your pastor Jeff, my pastor Jeff, uh, last Father's Day did a really good sermon on the prodigal son, and he actually shared this laminated thing called the Prodigal's Prayer. And so I'll get that to you. And if I can remember, I'll try to put a link to it in the notes as well. I'm gonna try to put real quick Prodigal's Prayer link. Um, but that's something that I think will help, because, like you said, at the end of the day, that's all you can do is pray. All right, well, I'll go
Yeah.
ahead and pray us up. Me and Chris got a little long winded on the intro, but it's been a minute since we talked, and we try to just let
Yeah.
God lead, man. And it's I know I had an eventful week. He had an eventful week, but so I'll go ahead and pray us up, and then Chris is going to dive into the covenant, which is a heavier topic, but we'll tee that up here in a second. So.
Ooh.
Uh,
Yeah.
Dear God, we just thank you for another night that me and Chris can get together. I know that, there's times where, if me and Chris are being honest, there's times where, we're looking at that clock like, man, dude, I just don't know if I can muster up the strength and the energy to just to get through these podcast episodes, because, to be honest with you, they're more daunting than people realize, and they take a lot out of us emotionally, physically, and just mentally. It's a lot. But we just pray that we get through the serious topic tonight. I know Chris has studied heavily for this, and so we want to make sure that we honor Roselle. She's the one that asked that we cover this, and so we want to make sure that we honor her through this as well. God, I just pray for the journey that I have ahead. Now that I've publicly announced this, I've seen behind closed doors. I've seen how this affected my father, this calling. And as you well know, I literally begged you for any other calling besides this. I didn't ask for it, but I felt led to do it. And so it's going to be a rough journey ahead. I mean, I'm literally just going to be under the spotlight essentially for the rest of my life. And my family is going to be under the spotlight, and so that's going to be it's just a heavy burden to carry, and also just you know just the fact that you have essentially people's blood on on your hands, and so I just pray that you keep your hand over me through this next season and the future ahead, whatever roads that leads me down. I just pray that you give me the strength and keep me humble and keep me focused on you, and that I can answer the call that you put on my life. God, I want to pray for the lady that I work with and her family situation. I don't know what's going on there, but I just pray that you can help me be a light, speak peace into her life, and be there for her and anybody else around me that might need a little bit of your grace, your mercy, and your light. I'm sure that the grapevine has probably been thumping this week, so I'm sure when I get back, everybody's going to know about my announcement and just get me prepared and ready for that because there might be other prodigals that do come. I want to pray for Chris's house in Portugal that you divinely orchestrate that the right people can get that house. It can be the right fit, the perfect fit. And I pray that the spiritual anointing that Chris and his wife left behind could touch not only that family, but future generations to come. And also, I pray that you'll just open some doors and give a clear path on what they need to do next during the season in their future house, and that you can lead them to a house that not only that they can find comfort and solace in, but it can actually be a house of ministry for you that 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 they can use for your will, God. I want to pray for specifically Chris's family, the lost sheep. We're not going to name them by name on here, but you know who they are. I pray that you work and you water and grow the seeds that they've planted, and you orchestrate other people into their lives that can preach the gospel and minister to them as well. But we also want to pray for the other prodigals and the lost sheep that might be listening to this or that might be attached to the people that's listening to this, God. Um, you were very clear about leaving the 99 to go after the one, and your heart is heavy for that one, those prodigals that have just lost their way or don't want to have anything to do with you. And I just pray that if anybody's listening to this and they have a prodigal in their life, they could reach out, you could touch their life as well. But just keep your hand over Chris's family. He's doing everything he can, him and his wife, to just live a life for you and let their marriage be a ministry. And I just pray that you give them the words or orchestrate situations to where they can continue to be light through their actions and minister to those around them. That's the lost sheep. But we want to pray that you keep your hand over them during this time and just allow doors to be open there. And then we want to pray that we can just get through this podcast tonight and show you honor, glory, and tackle this difficult topic, and that those that's listening can be ministered to. And it's in your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So I
Thank you,
believe
brother.
I got that right. This was Rozelle's question, correct?
I'm sorry, I had my
This was
headset off. What?
Rozelle's question, correct? Uh,
Yeah, this was Rizal.
okay.
Yep.
Which, like I said, we got a little long winded. We got like 15-ish minutes. So obviously, we're not going to be able to finish this tonight. But to be honest with you,
It's okay.
me and
It's okay.
I was
It's
just,
okay. We're just gonna wet their
yeah,
whistle a little bit.
me and Chris we're pretty beat down coming in this episode, anyway. So I think we needed a little bit of that recharging there at the beginning. But so I'm going to let Chris decided to tackle this topic in honor of Roselle. So I'm going to let him take off with it. But we are talking about the covenant tonight, the covenants that's within the Bible. And it's a serious thing. And to be honest with you, I, much like probably you and most people that's listening to this is not really something that I've really ever tackled and like studied specifically. I know about them, but I don't really know a lot of the specifics and the things behind them. And so, thankfully, you're the one that did all the research, and you know,
Dude, I just want to say right off, okay, first thing, when I prepare for these podcasts and I've got my notes in front of me, and Drew and I we coordinate with each other. We look at each other's notes and, oh, hey, did you remember this? Oh, hey, what about that? I can honestly say this is probably the first podcast where I was a little bit sick to my stomach coming into it. I'm nervous because this is a heavy topic. And Roselle, I love you. Thanks for putting me on the spot here, but this is for you, okay? We're going to break down covenant the best way we can. And anybody who's listening, remember, we're not theologians, we're not scholars. We haven't been through classes on covenant. Everything you're going to hear tonight is exactly what Drew and I have dug up in our Bibles or found wherever we could find on covenant. So I pray that I do this justice, and I pray that y'all get something out of it. So the things we're going to discuss tonight are going to be the definition of a covenant, the biblical meaning of covenant, a covenant versus a contract, marriage is a covenant, covenant versus promise, the old covenant and the new covenant, and why we need a new covenant. So we're going to get started with what is Webster's definition of covenant? A mutual consent or agreement of two or more persons to do or to forbear some act or thing, a contract, a stipulation. Okay, so that is the Webster's definition. So the biblical meaning is an agreement between God and his people in which God makes promises to his people and usually requires certain conduct from them. Okay. Any thoughts on that, Drew, in the opening?
I mean, so far I think you nailed it. Especially on the one thing that I guess I would highlight, and I'm highlighting on the notes here, but it's a mutual consent or agreement is the definition. But like you said, the biblical meaning of it, it oftentimes requires certain conduct from them. So I'm looking forward to how you're going to break all these down and stuff. But so far, I think you're nailing it. I think you're laying the groundwork. Uh, and I like even going to the notes above, I think the definition of the covenant, the biblical meaning, but then also the difference between covenant and contract, because I did just some studying on my own as well. And to be honest with you, I don't even think I fully understood, like, hey, it's more of an agreement than it is, okay, this is what you're going to do or else. It's like both parties have to hold their side of it. But yeah, the way you've laid this down so far has been perfect. So this is a difficult
So,
topic, and I feel like you're keeping it on a
ooh,
third grade level, which is
ooh.
where I need to be.
Well, I studied it on a third grade level, so but yeah, it's
Yeah.
so the reason this is so unfamiliar for us and something you've never studied and something I've never studied is because in today's world, you don't hear that word.
Hmm.
You don't hear covenant unless you're going to church. Like I know Baptists talk a lot about covenant stuff, but you don't hear that word in society. You don't. So when Rozelle's like, "Hey, I'd like to hear you guys do something on covenant," I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. Well, and
Okay,
to be honest with you, there's a lot of people that's like, oh, that's just Old Testament stuff. It doesn't matter. And to be honest with you, when Jesus came, he basically said, I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. Now granted, there was a new covenant that came about it, but you know, I think this is one of those things where it's really good to know as a part of your foundation of your Christian walk. And to be honest with you, admittedly, I'm like everybody else. This is something that I kind of just brushed over because it's like, hey, that's kind of dry. Let's get into all that, forgiveness and love and whatever stuff. But most people just brush over it because they're like, hey, it doesn't matter. Hey, that's all Old Testament stuff.
right. Old covenants. We don't even talk about covenants anymore. Yeah. So let's take a look at covenant versus contract. Okay. So a contract is a rather modern legal construct. It is a legally binding agreement to do or not do something, and it often includes penalties for breach of contract. Okay, so let's look at covenant. A covenant, and you highlight that word, is an ancient construct wherein two parties promise to do something or not to do something. Because of the fallen nature of humanity, the covenant may include penalties for breaking the covenant. But unlike a contract, it is considered immoral to break a covenant. It is a betrayal of trust. There is never a sense in which it is morally upright for a person to break a covenant, even if the covenant breaker is willing to pay the penalties. So think about that. That's why you don't hear that word anymore, brother, because it's a moral obligation. Like, you go into a contract, right? You go and you buy a car and you sign your contract that you're going to pay for this car, right? How easy is it to just not pay for it and let them come take it? And inside it sucks. Oh yeah, I don't have a car, but are you upset that you don't have a car, or are you upset that you broke your contract?
Yeah.
It's not upset because you broke your contract, right? So when you make a covenant with somebody, that word right there will shake people to their core. Hey, listen, Drew, I don't want to make a deal with you that every Tuesday night, Thursday night, maybe we're going to do podcast. I want a covenant with you. Now, come Tuesday night, you were talking earlier about, yeah, we're bushed, we're beat. It's time. We kind of just, it's hard to get on here. Well, if this was a covenant between us and between God, we'd probably be a lot more excited about trying to get in here because we don't want to break that.
Right.
So it's really any thoughts on covenant versus
No, I mean,
contract?
I think, like you said, you've teed it up more. I think you've teed it up perfect because it's like, a covenant is something. I think there's a more personal, like, element to it, like you said, where it's like, going back up here, where you said it's a betrayal of trust and it's considered immoral to break a covenant. A contract's just like, okay, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, whatever. But a covenant, it adds like almost like a sacred layer to it.
There's a moral principle there. There's a moral obligation there. Like, I don't want to break my covenant. And that, I think, honestly, like I said a couple minutes ago, is why you don't see that word in today's society, because it actually means something. And people feel obligated to follow through with
Right.
covenants. So yeah, it's bizarre. So this is why marriage, Drew, should be viewed as a covenant, not a contract. It is a covenant between two people with God and the community as witnesses. Unfortunately, in this day and age, it has become a contract more than a covenant, with all the prenuptial agreements, custody of kids, splitting up assets. It's a shame, because when we back in biblical days, when you got married, that was a big huge thing. That was a covenant between you two and God.
Yeah.
And that's not something that you wanted to break. Covenant marriage was meant to be a covenant from the beginning, and we as human beings have taken the covenant out of it and put contract in, so it's easier to get out of, and we don't feel morally obligated to stay.
Right.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I agree. I mean, like you said, back in the day, even when you become engaged, I forgot what the word is now, but betrothed was like, it was a higher form of like a legally binding contract. Like, once you become betrothed, you essentially were like pre-married at that point. And so we've lost a lot of that sacredness. Now, I mean, you get people that just marry for a joke or a prank or whatever. We've lost that. Yeah,
Citizenship.
we've lost the sacredness of that bond, that covenant.
Yeah, and that's a shame. And then you look around at the divorce rate today, and you wonder why. Well, you're not in a covenant with that person for life anymore, and then afterlife. Now it's just a contract till we're both tired of it, and we'll just sign a new contract, say we can go our own way. And it's taken so much depth out of marriage, and it allows people to get married out of lust instead of love. Allows people to get married just because they want to be married, not because they necessarily are attached to that person.
Right.
You start marrying people with that word covenant in it, and they might start taking marriage a little more serious if they know the Bible and they know what covenant
Right.
means. So that's where I was at. So now that we have gone over covenant versus contract, well, we've discussed what our thoughts were on that. So now let's look at covenant versus promise. So, promise. Covenants are supposed to be two-sided promises. That is, all parties involved in a covenant are supposed to keep up their end of the promise. A promise is one-sided. That is, one person makes themselves responsible to carry out a duty. But here's the kicker. In Scripture, covenants and promises are one-sided. The one notable exception to this is the Old Covenant between God and Israel when the law was given at Mount Sinai. Are you confused yet?
A little bit.
Hey, well, here's the kicker. We're not going to do a complete hour tonight, I don't think, brother, because I'm going to leave it right there. Because if you come back and listen next week, I'll explain it to you. And here's what we're going to explain. We're going to start explaining the different covenants that have happened since the dawn of time, since Adam. We're going to break down every single one of these covenants that have come across between humans and God. And we're going to take a look at those. And we're going to start next week with the Adamic.
Yeah.
So hard to
If
say
if
this.
you just say it
Adamic
real fast,
covenant.
that's what I try to do. Adamic.
Adamic covenant.
The Adamic
Yeah.
Covenant.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, Adamic covenant. Oh, what
Oh, what
happened?
happened?
Yeah, so we're gonna leave it there. I know you guys, this is really short on covenant, but like Drew said, we're both really exhausted. I promised Rizal that we would get to this, so I'm just giving you guys the teaser so we know what it looks like: a covenant versus a contract, a covenant versus a promise. Promises made, promises broke. How often have you heard that?
Hmm.
You hear it every day on the news right now with the president. Promises made, promises broke. That's the big headline, and that's because promises are easy to break. What's the biggest outcome? If I promise you, Drew, that tomorrow we're going to do another podcast tomorrow night at this time, and you're like, "Cool, dude, let's roll," and then I just don't show up, I just blow it off. I broke my promise. What does that do to me? Oh, dude, sorry, I broke the promise. Yeah, man, I got tired, fell asleep. Where now, if I have a covenant with you, I'm going to be on here.
Hmm.
Promises are so easily broken. Me personally, you can tell me how you feel. Me personally, I do not use that word "I promise" unless I know I can follow through with it. Because to me, promises are important, but
Oh,
a
you
lot of
definitely
people
can't
don't.
promise your kids if you're not going to follow through with it. They will not let you live it down.
Oh, dude, that's the worst thing. Side note, here we go. Side note, gotta say it. Dude, I think that is the worst thing with parenting, not following through. And I did it. I'm so guilty of it with 6 kids. You make these big, huge, massive, gnarly punishments. Oh, I'm gonna ground you from your phone for 2 weeks if you do that again. And they do it. And you take that phone away from them. And then like 4 days later, they're driving you so crazy, you just hand it back to them, and now they know.
Hmm.
You've already learned right there that that doesn't mean anything. So sticking to your stuff, yeah, is very important, especially raising kids. Because if you stick to your guns, they're gonna know mom and dad aren't messing around.
Oh yeah. I mean, like you said, it's like you've got to stick to your guns. And the other thing I've had to learn is if it's not really an option, don't make it one. If you basically say, "Do we need to leave right now?" and they say, "Yeah, I want to leave," you're like, "Okay, well, we're not going to leave." you know, the
Right. Well, then we're
yeah,
gonna stay. Darn it.
don't make it an option if it's not really an option. By the way, don't freak out. I went ahead. I made a copy for next week. I'm going to email that to you. I don't want you to look down and be like, "Where's my notes?"
Oh yeah, dude. That's what I do every dude. You know me. I'm learning technology. I'm not there yet, but I'm learning. So tonight I picked up my laptop, and every time I flip my laptop open, my notes or my Google Docs are right there on the front
Hmm.
screen, man, for me to start going into. I opened it tonight, and there was nothing, just the screensaver. And I looked at my wife, and I was like, "Where'd
Oh
my
no,
notes
what
go?"
happened?
Oh, this is not a good night to lose my notes. This is like
Well,
serious
and the
covenant.
thing
Is
too
this?
is like
And
with Google Docs, it's like, dude, if you lose them, we both lose them. you know.
she's like, babe, do you have your internet browser up? I'm like, no, it doesn't look like it. She goes, click on your internet, your Google. I clicked on it. There's my notes. She goes, there you go.
You were like, oh
Like,
my gosh, what am I gonna do? I guess it's a good thing you had them wrote
yeah,
down,
dude. So,
but
oh, dude, look, honestly, y'all, this is all covenant that I have been studying. Yeah, I've got all my notes right here just in case we have technical issues, but we don't. But Rizal, I love you. I love Ernest. I hope y'all are doing good on the island. We're praying for you every day. I hope that you get into this. At least we got to crack open the book, right, and look a little bit into covenant. But I promise next week we're going to spend a little less time talking, and we're going to really get into these different. Well, I say that I'm not promising that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm not
we're not
promising
gonna
that.
make a covenant
But
just yet.
Right, but we are, Roselle, we're gonna work on it, and I hope that, I hope this helps you. I hope it explains or you get out of it what I get out of it. And I just at the end of this series, I think that I'm gonna have a whole new outlook on the covenants that God made with his people, dude, because they were major, and you're gonna see that, but you gotta stick around.
Yeah. Well, like Chris said, we are out of time this week. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free. This comment came in from Facebook, I believe. Yeah, this comment came in on a Facebook post, so feel free to comment on our socials. If you watch this video later or any of our videos, feel free to comment. We'll pull them back up, but you can also email us at theunreligiouspodcast at gmail.com. That's another easy way to do it. Um, let me pull that up too. But yeah, feel free to email us at theunreligiouspodcast at gmail.com. And it just might make it into an episode, or we might make a whole episode out of it. But that's all that me and Chris have tonight. We're going to crack this open again next week and dive deeper into it. But this is the Unreligious Podcast. I am Staycation Drew.
And I am just Chris.
And we're going to roll on out of here. Y'all have a good one.
See you next time.